a little bit of design on your
chaos at Auburn, and he was there, and Cole came on with us with some greatness, truth, serum, also transparency. Cole, thanks for your time as well. We appreciate it. So what did Auburn need to accomplish, in your opinion, and what did they accomplish with their spring drills and game?
Well, I think you got a pretty good idea about how some of the depth is going to look. There are obviously some position battles that are happening down there on the Plains, quarterback being maybe the biggest one. And you didn't have Zach Calzada, who was really going during the spring. He's been involved with a few things that they've done, competed in some drills, but he's not full go. So he's been held out of scrimmages and things like that, which has given TJ Finley, I think, a huge advantage to be able to make a move, maybe be able to take that position. Now, the battle will still go up to the first game, maybe even through the first two games, because you get 2 games before you play Penn State. And I think Robbie Ashford, also a quarterback, the Oregon transfer, who's a big, physical, fast young man, he kind of showed that he'll be utilized. I think there will be a role for Robbie Ashford. I think that he'll help this football team one way or the other. And I don't know if he can win the starting job, but I absolutely believe that he'll be somebody that helps that Auburn football team. And you had 3-4 offensive linemen that were out, so some of those guys get to roll in, get to show what they can do. And you saw pretty good depth from tight end, running back, and defensive line. So I think you got to see some of the guys in action, like Landon King. He moved out to wide receiver. He was a tight end last year. He'll be a bigger body that can help him on the perimeter. So just seeing some guys in different places and seeing how some of the depth is playing out.
Cole, you mentioned the wide receivers briefly there. Would you say that's the biggest question mark offensively outside of the quarterback spot, and who ends up taking that?
Probably, and it's close with the offensive line. You know, because that offensive line hadn't played well
True.
in the last couple of years. But, you know, you've got Nick Brahms back at center. You'll have Austin Troxell back, who's played some tackle. Brandon Council is not going through spring. You know, he's a guy that played pretty good football the last 2 years. He's had surgery. But Jalil Irvin did some good things. Cam Stutz did some good things. So, you know, Killian Zaire's had a nice spring at tackle. So at least you'll have some bodies there, some capable bodies. And I think you have a really nice group of tight ends that can help them. So it comes down to wide receiver, because let's be honest, if you're not going to have, even if you do have Bryce Young, I mean, you still have to have guys that can get you out of jams at times. You're going to need to throw a hitch and a guy take it for 20, 30 yards. You're going to need to throw a bubble screen and a guy take it for 80. And we just haven't seen a lot of the guys on this roster be able to do that. I think Shed Jackson's had a good spring. I think Tavares Dawson could be a guy that really helps them. I think Javaris Johnson not going through spring again. I think he could really help. Malcolm Johnson's a guy that has big time speed, but he just hadn't been a collegiate receiver very long. So, you know, Malcolm Johnson's a guy that he didn't go through his senior year of high school football because of COVID. You know, enrolls early down at Auburn, not going to get much of a look right away. So he's just kind of still trying to work his way into the lineup. But I think wide receiver is the biggest question mark, because if you get good play there, I think you could be, if you get 2 or 3 wide receivers that have B-plus seasons, I think you could be looking at the difference between maybe 6 or 8 wins for Auburn.
You know, when we discuss spring drills, or even August before fall camp ends and the season starts, we used to discuss positions, talent, whatever, depth, etc. And now we have to bring up NIL. How is Auburn right now, Cole, when it comes to keeping up with everyone else when it comes to NIL?
I think they're working towards being competitive. I don't think that there are a ton of teams that they're necessarily past right now. I think you have Texas A&M, you have Kentucky, and you know maybe there's a few other that are knocking on the door towards the top of the SEC. And I think there's kind of a logjam of teams that are just kind of trying to catch up that aren't necessarily ahead of the curve. Now, some people will sit there and say, "Well, I'll look at Alabama, look at some of their deals; they're ahead of the curve." But I think that's just more of the individual play. Like Bryce Young's not getting deals because of Alabama's collective, their NIL collective. Bryce Young's getting NIL deals because he plays quarterback at Alabama, and he's good, and he's a high-profile recruit, and now he'll get more because he just won the Heisman. So I think even Alabama is a little bit behind, maybe Georgia, A&M, and Kentucky. So I think Auburn's getting there, though. The collective is in place, and they're trying to work together to get more people involved in that. And trying to work just exactly what the details on it are going to be. But, you know, there are some really nice examples of athletes who have done some things on their own. I think the gymnastics team's a really good example of that. And it's not just Suni Lee. There are a couple of other athletes that have good NIL deals in place. So I think there are a lot of people that care about Auburn. There's a lot of reason to market athletes from Auburn. So there have been some good deals that have happened kind of on their own, I guess organically. But that's not going to get it done and keep you competitive in today's college football or college basketball. So I think they're heading in the right direction, but not necessarily where they need to be just yet.
Cole, obviously, when we talked to you last time, I mean, the big topic was what was going on with Brian Harsin. That settled down shortly afterwards, and they kind of just kept going about their business. But, you know, in terms of the fire or whatever you want to call it that was, are all the ashes stamped out? Is that all, you know, cooled down now? Is there still some embers that they got to worry about?
Well, I think Brian Harsin wants everybody to know that he's moving on. He's doing his job, and everything is status quo for him. But I also think he wants people to understand, you know, how far this put them behind in certain aspects, and that is just confidence within the roster, recruiting, things of that nature. But, you know, I've seen this be a little bit of a rallying point for the team through the spring. I think they've come together. I think that the leadership with some of the older players have taken the understanding that, listen, we got to do this on our own. Let's come together. Let's use this as a sort of a rallying cry. And I think there's been more positive vibes through spring practice than most people would realize. He's gone out of his way to make some of the drills and practice a little bit more fun, a little more competitive, you know, things they probably wouldn't normally do. And I think that's gotten people feeling better about themselves. And then, you know, the recruiting's been great in the last month and a half. I think Jimmy Brumbaugh and Ike Hilliard have had a lot to do with that being added to that staff. But, you know, Trevon Reed's the guy that helps them off the field. The recruiting has been totally different in the last month as opposed to what it was maybe the 2 or 3 months prior. So things are headed in the right direction. And I think that a lot of people are trying to put that behind them. It's going to be a cloud that's going to be very difficult to overcome because it's, let's be real, it got in the way of recruiting. And a lot of fans saw it and immediately thought, well, here we go again. It's dead man walking. Why should we put our resources, energy, or thought into this thing really turning itself around? And I think Brian Harsin knows the only thing he can do now is win games. You know, they go out and win 8, maybe 9 or 10, and that's a giant middle finger to those individuals that wanted him out. And that's probably the only thing he's going to do to be able to save his job long term.
What did you learn about him and the way he, you know, again, took so many darts, bullets, whatever you want, arrows, and just kind of stood up to it? And I know he still could have been fired or something could have happened, but what did you learn about Brian Harsin?
Just that he's a guy that's not easily going to back down, and he is focused, driven, determined, maybe more so than any of us thought. Because, I mean, when you're around him, you realize, I mean, I did the game Saturday, and you know, I told him we're going to try to get him on camera a little bit, get him on the microphone a little bit. I did it from the field, and I mean, you're not going to get him too far away from ball. Like, I tried to get him to have some fun a little bit. He's just focused in on exactly what's happening, the coaching points, mistakes that were made, how they can correct them, things like that. So he's just, I've just learned that he probably trusts his scheme and his philosophy and his way of doing things more than I ever believed. And that he's pretty stubborn and pretty hard-headed and pretty determined to do things and get things right. And so I gained a lot of respect for him, to be honest with you. And I knew him a little bit before. I know him a lot better now, but definitely trust his direction as far as where he's taken the Auburn program, because there's not a lot of guys that would have stood for it. There's a lot of guys that would have crumbled with everything that was going around.
So, Cole, they got the quarterback competition ongoing. We talked about receivers and O-line. You know, obviously in college football these days, even when you break spring, your roster's not necessarily set because of the old transfer portal. Do you see them having any needs, or do you see them pursuing anybody in this offseason period to try and complete what maybe is missing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's more so for depth. Now, would you like to go out and get a number one receiver like you guys were talking about? Sure, of course. Would you like to go get a tackle that you know could lock down one of those spots and you're not going to have to worry about pass protection from whichever side he's lined up on? Yes, definitely. Another defensive tackle that could really bolster the depth there, maybe come in and be a rotational guy, you would. I think tight end, running back, DB, quarterback, your numbers are fine. But along the offensive line, you can use more capable bodies. Along the defensive line, you know, the two starters at the edge positions, Derek Hall and Iku Leota, I think are great. I don't know if they have anybody behind them. I don't know if they have a guy that's ready to step in after those guys and be anything close to what they are. I think Jason Jones, the Oregon transfer defensive tackle, is really going to help. I mean, he gives them a physical presence that they just did not have on the roster, but they don't have any more of him. You know, you go down to Marquise Burks after that, and you lose a little bit of girth. And, you know, a guy that just doesn't kind of give you Marcus Harris, another guy, the transfer from Kansas that's helping them. They don't give you that same body type. So would you like another guy or two inside that could add some depth and allow you to rotate your D-line? Of course you would. So I think there are a few spots, and they're going to keep looking. I definitely don't think that they're done in the portal. And as we all know, once spring football is over, we usually get just another wave into the portal, which, I mean, Georgia just had 2 5-stars go in there yesterday. So it's not like we have to wait till spring ball's over.
True.
You know, that thing's open 24/7, man. So guys are going in all the time. And I definitely think that Auburn will be looking to see if there's somebody attractive there that they could add to their roster. Because I think they're in the high 70s right now, total scholarships. So they have plenty of room to go grab a few guys.
It's like a convenience store, the transfer portal. It's always open.
7-Eleven, man.
7-Eleven. Yep. Cole, you mentioned the quarterback competition and all of what they have. And one of the things that may have prevented that a little bit was Demetrius Davis, the young star from North Shore High School in Houston that was so amazing. What happened? I know he transferred. I know he's in the portal. I don't even know if anyone's picked him up. What happened there at Auburn?
No, and I'll be kind of a sidebar to that. That's a really weird deal, and you almost accidentally went down that path, so I'll just follow up. There's about 5 guys from last year's Auburn roster that are sitting across the street from the football facility in the dorm in the portal that have nowhere to go. And it just, to me, that's more of a 1,000-foot view at college football, and one of the issues that we kind of have right now is we got all these guys on these different campuses that are in the portal. They're not going through spring ball, so they're not developing. They're not getting any better. And I don't know what they're waiting for. Then they're just sitting there for somebody to call them that they deem satisfactory. And this is not Demetrius. I'm not pointing the finger at him.
Right.
But, you know, sitting there waiting, saying, well, I thought I had a Baylor offer. I thought Miami was going to call. I thought Texas was going to call me. I thought Michigan was coming. And all of a sudden they're trying to decide between FCS and Sun Belt and MAC teams, and they think they're better than that. So that's a little bit of an issue where we are right now, because Auburn's not the only places that I know have numerous guys that are sitting there on campus still in school, but they're not practicing because they're in the portal. And I'd be willing to bet a lot of them, the coaches don't even want them back. They're just sitting there saying, no, you went in, go find somewhere else. We're going to move on. And, you know, Demetrius Davis to me was a guy that was a mega athlete, very explosive, super fast. He just had some issues processing things, making the proper decisions in a timely fashion. And also probably never really got a true chance to prove that he could be an every down quarterback. He was third string last year. Bo Nix was on the roster. TJ Finley was there. Now you get Calzada coming in. You get Robbie Ashford coming in. It was going to be very difficult for him to even get the amount of reps necessary to prove that he could potentially be the starting quarterback or maybe even the backup quarterback down the road. So I just think he's got to find a spot for him that has fewer numbers to compete with, where even if he is having a few struggles, there's a few things that he doesn't necessarily do as well as some other guys do. He's still going to have a good opportunity to make up for it with what he does do well, quarterback.
You want to give a plug real quick? I know you got to go, and we appreciate your time on Jeff Klein. I saw what you did with some kind of a fund trying to with who's been in, I guess, in the hospital.
Yeah, you know, you're referencing my former teammate that's having a hard time right now. Yeah, Jeff Klein played quarterback with me, and he was 2 years behind me at Auburn, and he's been diagnosed with cancer. It's at stage 4. He is currently on life support. They've moved him down to Birmingham, so he's here in the same town that I'm in at UAB, which is a wonderful medical facility. Has 3 young boys under the age of 7, married to Adrian Coley, who also attended Auburn and is from here in the Birmingham area. And I mean, you just see how it's one reason that college athletics are so great. You know, we're at $118,000 in his GoFundMe in less than 3 days, and you know it hits me a lot harder because I have 3 under 8, and each of his kids are about 6 months younger than my 3, and I keep playing that mental game with myself of, man, what if this was me? Man, what if this was me?
Yep.
You know, this would be the same situation my wife was in, and it's just it crushes me. So, you know, tried to pay a little tribute to him. He was supposed to go out there and compete in the flag football game with the other lettermen. And, wasn't able to do that. And it's just, he's having a tough time right now. And it's one of those things that, 4 weeks ago, he went to the chiropractor with back pain. And then 2 weeks later, he admitted himself to the hospital. They did blood work. There was no sign of cancer. And then he went and had a scan, MRI, found lesions on his spine, and then had a scan and found more. And here we are just trying to still find the exact source of where the cancer is coming from, because it is metastatic, which means widespread. So, we need to start treating it and get to the bottom of it. And thankfully, people are working around the clock on it. But it is a difficult, frustrating situation. And I hate it for his wife and those young boys as much as I hate it for him, because he was just a heck of a guy, a heck of a competitor.
Thank you for your time, Cole, as always. Appreciate that. And also you fighting along with others for your friend as well in Jeff Klein. Cole Cubelic, again, he did the spring game for Auburn, does many things when it comes to covering Auburn, also a part of the SEC Network with us as they wrapped up their spring with the game, and also loved what he said about the transfer portal. Boy, that thing gets a lot of attention. And then you think about, where are these players who are in the transfer portal? As a lot of programs are wrapping up or have wrapped up their spring drills, and they're sitting, as he said, across the street in a dorm room waiting for who? Someone to call them? How many of them will maybe never play again or end up just a mess?
They'll play again. They just won't play at the level they've been playing at. Those dorm rooms are going to be a step down wherever they go next. I mean, that's an interesting picture to paint of just they're sitting there practicing and can walk across the street and there's, quarterback and whoever else has already entered the portal just sitting there waiting on a phone call. But right across the street, there's those guys practicing. That'd be a weird feeling. And, unfortunate for them. I'm sure somebody, will offer Demetrius Davis a spot or whatever, with all of these guys. But, just sometimes you listen to the wrong advice. Sometimes you maybe think a little bit think a little bit too much of yourself. Maybe others put that seed in your brain. I don't know. Like I can't pretend to have been in that type of a position to know what must be going through your head. But I know not a lot's intelligent going through some of these people's heads when it comes to this decision. I'm not saying Demetrius Davis in particular or whatever, but it's just that image of people just sitting in the portal, just wasting away, their playing time in their youth, even if, you catch on a little while later. I mean, still, that's just time wasted.
I agree.
So just part of the deal. I saw basketball. There's 1,000 people in the portal right now. I don't know where all those people are supposed to go. I really don't. But that's part of the what you created. We hear all about the success stories and those people that just dive right in. They go from Auburn to Ohio State, or they go from Ohio State to USC, or whatever the case may be. But those are the ones we hear about. We often don't hear too much about those others that put their name in there and then, nothing ever happens again. And then their careers go from D1 to D nothing. And that's unfortunate. So, yeah, got to be smart. Hopefully listening to the right type of advice. And, sometimes it's good. It's a needed correction. Some people don't need to be playing at the level that maybe they got to, and they need a little bit of a readjustment. But I don't think that's necessarily the case with, Demetrius Davis or probably most people that end up at Auburn. I think they're ready to play D1. But
Lando 7448 on the chat room. They didn't believe in him, D. Davis. He just had a kid back in Houston. Houston better go get D. Davis, Texas legend. He was a high school legend. I mean, threw the Hail Mary, beat Duncanville, won a couple in a row, and of course North Shore just won it with a freshman at quarterback this past year. So thanks for the insight, Lando, on that. And what also I wonder,
Hogerson will get a quarterback going now. I mean, I'm looking forward to Clayton Tune. He's been progressing, and Davis. Yeah, that would be a smart landing spot if they were interested. Though that's the other thing, is these schools don't necessarily have to be interested. So who knows? I mean, that would make a lot of sense. Obviously, being close to home, like you said, but still, I remember him going in there and. I remember when Baylor recruited him a couple years back, and they were hot and heavy on him. But I guess they're satisfied with what they've got right now. So yeah, we'll see.
What would be interesting is in Mac, maybe tomorrow with Mac Rhodes, and I'll ask Phil Bennett. We'll ask him earlier in about 15 minutes or so. When you are a player and you enter the transfer portal, what happens to what you get while you're a student athlete at a university, and you're on campus or you're in an apartment or a house across the street or somewhere in that same city of Opelika in Auburn, Alabama? And who's paying for things now? Where's that money coming from? Are you getting stipend money? Are you getting cost of living money? I don't know how that works. Are you still a student on campus but no longer in the football program? That's just some things that popped up in my head as he was talking about that 1,000-foot view of college football. All right, when we come back, a couple of notes. We'll